This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. What I'm looking at today is 2021's Cube, directed by Yasuhiko Shimizu. And this is a reboot of the 1997 Vincenzo Natali movie. And it is probably one of the better remakes you're likely to see, because what it manages to do is take everything from the original and tweak it just a little bit. And what makes that work in this instance is the fact that the movie is done from the perspective of a Japanese person, which is to say that everything the characters do is entirely within that context. So the movie is the same, essentially, as Vincenzo Natali's movie, and yet at the same time it's not. It is just fascinating. If you're at all familiar with Vincenzo Natali's movie, you know this movie, essentially. Which is to say you have 5 or 6 people who wake up in this cube. They don't know why they're there, they don't know who put them there. All they know is that they are there. And they have to deal with each other as well as trying to navigate this cube, which is filled with all sorts of booby traps designed to kill them. Like with Natali's movie, you don't know why this is happening. There is no explanation for it, but it alludes to certain things. And this is where the whole cultural aspect of the movie comes into play. With the original Cube, it felt very much as if the people who are trapped within it were randomly chosen. It also didn't explain why the people were there, but the cube itself was just a device in which they were trapped in. It didn't have motivation, it seemingly, I should say, didn't hate them, it didn't like them. It just was, and they were there, and that's it. And there were booby traps. It was very simple and very concise, like a shark in that sense. It doesn't hate you, it doesn't love you. But if you're in front of it, it might kill you. Conversely, the cube worked the same. With the 2021 movie, its nature changes somewhat. And it's not quite as neutral in the way it does things. Which is to say, with the original movie, if you were to enter a cube and there were a booby trap, that booby trap is triggered instantly. There is no delay to whatever is going to happen within that space. It just happens very quickly. I said instantly before, that's not quite the case, but it does happen very fast. With this version of Cube, not so much. There seems to be more intention on the part of the space. For instance, there's a scene where 2 characters are arguing and a barrier pops up that separates them, forcing the people on the other side to go in one direction while not allowing the people opposite them to do the same. It didn't kill anyone, mind you, it just separated them. And I mentioned intention earlier, and that alludes to it. It doesn't seem as random anymore. And in fact, what was interesting about this movie is that it almost implied a somewhat supernatural focus. With the original movie, there was nothing at all supernatural about what was happening to these people. It was just an act of other people that put them in the situation. And they were trapped in a mechanical device. That was it. As I said, it was fairly simple in that way. With the Japanese remake of Cube, it's more nuanced. And as I said, it feels like it's vaguely supernatural adjacent. I don't think it is, but it feels that way. Because as I mentioned earlier, it seems to choose when to do things. And on that front, there's a scene where everyone is in a room and they've been there for a period of time. But something is triggered. Now, keep in mind, as I said earlier, that has never happened in the original movie. Either a trap is present or a trap is not. There is no delaying a trap for minutes. It doesn't work that way. And in fact, I would argue that it wasn't even a trap. It was just a way to move them to another space. What essentially happened was that you had a bunch of characters in one area, and they were there for, at least to me, it seemed like quite a few minutes. And suddenly smoke starts coming out of vents, forcing them to leave. It didn't kill them. It didn't do anything to them other than force them to leave. Well, I should say, if they'd stayed, it would probably kill them. But they didn't. It just drove them out. If you're at all familiar with the first movie, and if you're watching this, I assume you are, that was not how it worked. That smoke would have been something like mustard gas or acid. It would have killed them. Though more importantly, it would have killed them right when they entered the space. It wouldn't wait for an indeterminate amount of time before doing something. And that's what I mean when I say that there's an agency to the cube that wasn't present in the original movie. It seems there's a purpose in it. The movie doesn't tell you what that purpose is, but unlike the first one, there is a definite motivation behind it. And this movie also spends a little more time going into the private lives of characters, which is to say, their lives before they entered the cube. This is not unknown for cube movies to do. While it didn't happen in the original Cube, Cube 2 Hypercube did go into their past lives a little bit more. And it strikes me almost as a franchise opportunity that people don't seem to be recognizing, in the sense that I would love to see a cube from, let's say, India, or Africa, or even somewhere in Europe. Just the idea that when you place the cube in those different locales, how it responds changes subtly. Not entirely, because I think that would defeat the purpose, but subtly, in ways that you might not anticipate. And that's what this version of Cube does. It's very good. It's not as good as the original, but it is very good, and it's interesting. And it engages in a way remakes don't often do. And it also reminds me very much of the Hellraiser reboot. Though with that movie, the changes seem to be made because changes. Because we need to do it just to do it. As opposed to what was done in the Cube reboot, which felt to me at any rate, very much based on culture. In this case, the Japanese culture. So that makes it really interesting. This somewhat supernatural feel to it is interesting. And it's not something that whacks you over the head. It's very subtle, like much of this movie. And that perhaps can be taken as a criticism as well, depending on what you're looking for. In that if you're looking for this to be a particularly gory movie, even perhaps as gory as the first one was at points, you're not going to find it. It has its moments, but that's not its goal. It takes what the original did and just alters it just a little bit, and it works really well, though it is not the original Cube. If you're expecting Vincenzo Natali's movie, watch Vincenzo Natali's movie. You're not going to get that from this version of Cube, but what you will get is a very interesting movie that explores the culture of Japan in some really fascinating ways. So what do you think? This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. Do you agree, disagree? Let me know down below. And as usual, consider a like or a follow.